It's Hallie. Hallie. Living my life and doing random stuff. It's Hallie. Hallie. What are we doing today? Yeah. Alright, so today I have a good show for you guys. I'm going to have a special guest explain what happened to me when I was 19. Obviously, I'm in a wheelchair, and I'm sure you guys want to know why. So here you go. Here's an explanation. My mom. Yay!
Hi, my name is Gail, and yes, I want to help Hallie explain what happened to her because she does have a brain injury, and with that, her memory is not as good, and pronunciation, her speech isn't as clear, so she asked me to help her with this. So again, as she said, she was 19 years old when things started happening, and basically she started getting really bad headaches. Um, and then pretty soon she was having nausea and throwing up a lot. So we didn't really know what to make of this, and we took her to a doctor. I think she went to probably Mount Sinai, and they did a CT scan. Couldn't find anything wrong. We did everything. Pregnancy tests. All kinds of stuff, and nothing seemed to show up as far as why she was having headaches like that. Um, so eventually, she really got a lot worse. It was gotten to a point where she could hardly get up. Um, she would have to, she would go to work and come home early because she just wasn't feeling well. And so we finally got a doctor who said, I think we need to do an MRI. So they did an MRI on her head, her brain. And immediately they told me she needs to go to a hospital right now because she had hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus, if you don't know what that is, it is when you have water on your brain. So she was immediately sent to, I think it was Mount Sinai. I can't remember now, but again, this was back in 2013. And so they put a shunt in her head. Basically, the shunt it was inserted here, and it's a drain, and it drains into her kidneys to keep the water off her brain. So once she healed from that, she was able to go back to work, and the doctors at University of Illinois, which is where she ended up getting treated, they did not want to do anything because not only did she have hydrocephalus, they discovered that she had what you call an AVM. AVM stands for arteriovenous malformation, and that is basically a bundle of tangled blood vessels. And they can be anywhere in your body. So Hallie's AVM happened to be on her right cerebellum, and it was a very large AVM. In fact, it covered pretty much her entire right cerebellum. So University of Illinois did not want to do anything else in terms of surgery or embolization because of the size. Surgery really was not an option to remove it. So they just said, we'll just monitor the AVM, and that was not a good, to me, that was not a good option because when you have an AVM, your blood vessels are tangled, and they're basically, they're bending and they're tangled, and you eventually something's gonna pop, right? So for a whole year, she was able to go back to work with no issues, and then lo and behold, one day she was coming home from work, and she was going up the platform, Her Starbucks store was right there on the corner of Roosevelt Road and Wabash. So, there's a steep stairs that you have to go up to get to the platform for the train. And on her way up, she fell. And she fell hard. In fact, the ambulance had to come and get her. She broke some of her teeth in the front. And so she ended up back at the University of Illinois. And again, they didn't want to do anything other than monitor it. Basically, you kind of wait for that person to really have a bad experience where they may actually just die, because once the blood vessel pops, now you got blood in your brain, and that's not a good thing either. So we decided to get a second opinion, and we went to Rush. The doctors there thought that they could help her because at that time she was 20 years old, and they said that we really have to try and do something because she's only 20 years old, and they would like to try and prolong her life as long as they could. So anyway, she ended up doing embolization, which is basically shooting some type of foreign substance in the blood vessels. In her case, it was onyx, and they were basically shutting down those blood vessels that fed into the AVM so that it would shut it down. Not that it was going to shrink, but at least it wouldn't get fed a blood supply anymore. So they did the embolization, but in the middle of them doing that, her brain swelled up so much that they ended up having to remove part of her skull so that the brain can continue to expand. And then they put her in a coma for a couple of weeks because she could not move at all during that time. So they induced a coma with propofol, and also she suffered a stroke. So that is why she is in the wheelchair. She had a stroke, which left her with absolutely no balance at all. She was pretty much a vegetable almost, because everything. She had a trach for breathing. They had to insert a tube for eating, so she can get nutrition. She couldn't talk. She couldn't walk. She really couldn't do anything. She could barely hold up her head. So, needless to say, she recuperated, she rehabilitated, but at this point, she is still in a wheelchair. She goes to therapy every year to try and strengthen her body. And who knows what can happen with all the different things that they have these days, that science is always coming up with new innovative things. So we still have hope, but in the meantime, Hallie's been restricted to a wheelchair, and she's living her life. So I'm very proud of her because she does keep a pretty positive attitude. I mean, can you imagine how you would feel if here you are trying to enter the world as a young adult, and immediately you're shot down pretty much with a disability. So I do commend her on her positive outlook on life. She continues to try and be as independent as she can, and with that, that's her story. So, all right, so I'm gonna let Hallie take over at this point, but that is what happened to my child, my sweet daughter, Hallie. Okay.
Alright guys, so that's my show for today. I will see you next week. Bye.